Everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum, or APrIGF for short, and a discussion about how it relates to the broader internet governance system. My name is Jordan Carter, and I'm coming to you as AUDA's Internet Governance and Policy Director today. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm coming to you from today, which is the original home of the Wurundjeri people, and would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples who were the first to innovate and use technology on this land, and to do so over many millennia, knowledge upon which we continue to build today. Please note, if you haven't seen the warning already, that this session is being recorded for later distribution. And that's the basic bit of housekeeping at this point. So AUDA recently announced that we will be hosting the Asia Pacific Regional IGF in Brisbane at the Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre at the end of August, Tuesday the 29th to Thursday the 31st. As usual, the APrIGF will be a hybrid event, allowing both in-person and online participation. And we're doing this because championing multi-stakeholder engagement, both within Australia and internationally, is a strategic focus for AUDA. AUDA, for those of you who don't know, is the CCTLD manager, the .au domain administration is the full name. We do that work under terms of endorsement with the Australian government, and multi-stakeholder engagement is one of the core functions that are in that document as well. And we bid to host this event, given that it's a strong foundation in the multi-stakeholder in the region, as you'll hear about from our two amazing speakers today. That multi-stakeholder model is how the internet is currently governed, and it also gives the basis of principle on which AUDA operates the .au domain too. And the essence of that is around equal voice for the various parts of the internet ecosystem, be it civil society, technical community, business, government, academia, all having a say, and not just a voice, but also decisional rights in making the decisions around how core internet systems work and develop. And protecting the essence of this model is absolutely critical to making sure that the internet remains open, free, secure, and globally interoperable. Alongside the APrIGF, AUDA is also pleased to be supporting NetThing, which is the Australian Internet Governance Forum, the National and Regional Initiative for Australia, which will be co-located with APrIGF on the 28th of August. So that's the Monday, sort of day zero. There'll be a number of other day zero events too, I think, that are in the works of possible Pacific IGF, and also potentially at the end of the week, a parliamentary track associated with the APrIGF as well. So you can tell that this event will be a huge enabling event for broad engagement around the region and between the region and the Australian internet community as well. We want to see it building capacity and sharing knowledge about internet governance and internet policy topics, and being a real sort of diverse set of views, voices, participation, and so on. To tell us more about the APrIGF and how it relates to the global internet governance system, we're joined today by two experts in the region. I'm very delighted to be sharing a stage with them. First up will be Anju Mangal, who's the chair of the APrIGF multi-stakeholder steering group. She'll provide some insights into the APrIGF process. And we're also welcoming Joyce Chen, who'll be providing some global context, given her key roles in NetThing, where she's a member of the steering committee, and the United Nations IGF, the global umbrella IGF, where she's a member of the multi-stakeholder advisory group. I'll leave each of them to talk a bit more about their roles and backgrounds. And they'll have each about 10 minutes to give you a bit of a briefing. Please feel free to use the Q&A module. I know that sometimes in these things, it's a bit confusing about where to stick questions, but we do hope that we'll have time to tackle any and all questions that you've got at us. So please use the Q&A module. It should be available down the bottom of the Zoom or the top, depending on which operating system you're using. But please do use the Q&A if you'd like us to tackle questions. Don't pop them in chat if there's any chat available. I don't know what the settings are for this webinar. And with that, I'll hand over to Andrew. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Jordan. Good morning and good afternoon to our Asia Pacific members and friends. It's a pleasure for me to speak on behalf of APrIGF, multi-stakeholder steering group, and our community of experts that continue to drive the internet governance initiatives in their countries and also in the region. We are grateful to AUDA for hosting and sponsoring the APrIGF. We would not have this event in Brisbane in Australia if it hadn't been for auDA. So we are very grateful to Jordan, Annalise, Michael, Angela, and the entire team of auDA for hosting us. We are also very grateful to our partners, APNIC, IGF Secretariat, IGFSA, ISOC Foundation, ICANN, APTLD, and many other partners for supporting us behind the scenes. I wanted to keep it very informal, but just to give you a sort of a background on APrIGF. So Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum is a platform for discussion. We do quite a lot of exchanges and collaboration at a regional level, and it's very multi-stakeholder driven. So we have our multi-stakeholder communities of experts from government, civil society, academia, NGOs, public and private sector. They come together to advance the internet governance development in Asia and Pacific. And we do our best to encourage a bottom-up and a people-centered approach. So anything that happens at the regional level should trickle down to the national level, and anything that is discussed at the national level should actually be aligned to the regional level. We have an events committee, proposal committee, a fellowship committee, and a stakeholder engagement committee. And these committees are made of incredible people who work behind the scenes. Many of them are volunteers to ensure a consistent and coordinated approach. And I honestly want to give credit to some of these committees for taking the lead on various pillars that we have, and most of them are here today. So with the notion to leave no one behind, our aim is to promote the participation of Indigenous communities, persons with disabilities, rural and remote communities, youths, women and girls, and the communities that are usually left behind, not only in discussions, but also at the regional and national level. And this year, we are excited to join you in Australia. But many of us are still facing a lot of challenges. Many of these countries that we work with in the Asia Pacific region have limited capacity, limited resources, and we do our best to ensure equal participation. But, despite all these challenges, we try our best to ensure that they can still participate. So we believe in a hybrid approach, which has been quite effective for the past few years, and having national hubs joining online is also very key. This year's theme is emerging technologies, what's next for internet governance in APAC, which reminds us that, the internet and digital connectivity, it's evolving every day, but we are also wondering, how do we make sure that we keep up with the new technology and online tech, and also being aware of the issues and challenges that we face. And at the end of the day, I think one of the key things we want is to translate all these discussions into actionable items in the countries or even in policies. We also want to ensure that it's multilingual, because we want to emphasize that we want to be able to have local language discussions, people using their mother tongue. So we want to make sure that it's inclusive, diverse, and also, keeping in mind that we want to have equity. So this year, we're very excited. We have the APrIGF.Asia with all the, the website with all the relevant information. We're also on social media. You can find us on social media. And we're looking forward to your participation, and we want to build a multi-stakeholder bridge between Australia, IGF, auDA, NetThing, Pacific IGF, even this year is happening, co-locating with APrIGF. And it's all about working together, and we need your support. So we look forward to seeing you in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for that start. And I hope it will shake a few questions and follow-ups out of people. Let me hand straight over to Joy. Joy, take the floor.
Thanks very much, Jordan, and lovely to see you, Andrew, as well in this webinar. And thank you very much for representing the APrIGF as our chair. A bit about myself. I am a member of the IGF. So this is the Global IGF MAG, which is the multi-stakeholder advisory group. Also a member of the APrIGF MSG, which that is the multi-stakeholder steering group. And I'm also on the NetThing steering committee. So that's quite a lot of different, at every single level of IGF, I am involved in one way or another. Very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak. I'd love to know what questions that you might have as we go through this webinar. So if you already have them in mind, please start popping them in the chat, or sorry, in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them. But first of all, I think I'd like to talk about the global IGF and then work my way down regional and then national level. For those of you who might not be so familiar with the IGF, basically think of it as a forum or a platform that brings together anyone who is interested in internet public policy issues to have discussions, discourse, share best practices, exchange information on some of these issues. Literally, you don't have to be working in an internet organization or an organization that is, for example, developing the internet. In order to be part of the IGF is really a forum for everyone. And to that end, in fact, the overarching theme for the IGF this year is the internet we want, empowering all people. So you might be starting to think, oh, that's different from the APrIGF. The APrIGF has their own theme. And I will explain that. That's because all the national and regional initiatives, or what we call the NRIs, that fall under the umbrella of the IGF are autonomous. So they all work independently of the global IGF, but they can take reference from the global IGF. So typically the IGF sets the agenda for the annual conference, and then the NRIs may or may not decide to take reference from it. In this case, the APrIGF is quite autonomous. As part of the program committee for the APrIGF, what we do is we come up with an overarching theme that suits the regional community's needs and what we think is important for the Asia Pacific region. Whereas at the global IGF level, we're really looking at a theme that would fit across all different regions. So the way that the different IGFs are structured is really depending on the audience for the event. So a little bit more about the IGF. We have the MAG, obviously, which I'm part of, and we help to organize the annual conference, the program, what sessions go into it. Typically, we see, even upwards of 400 to 500 proposals coming in because the process for which the program is designed is open, it's bottom up. You can read all the proposals that get accepted. So it's transparent in that sense, although arguably the process for which the MAG works is semi-transparent. And I say that because we do have our own MAG meetings where it's just for the MAG members. But we also have open consultations where anyone who is, again, interested in the IGF or how the IGF works, how the MAG works, can participate in these open consultations and to provide your feedback, your comments, any opinions you might have about the IGF for that year. So that is roughly how the IGF works. Then we move to the APrIGF. As I've mentioned, the regional IGF would have our own sort of focus areas, which are slightly a departure from the IGF. But then this is a two-way process, right? So what happens is the APrIGF would then report whatever was discussed during that event to the global IGF. And that is also the same for the national level IGFs. So in Australia, the national IGF would be NetThing. And that is really where the Australian internet community, or again, anyone who is interested in internet public policy, you could be a student, you could be just a general end user, you could be someone who is working for a civil society organization, as long as you have an interest in the internet or something to do with online content, for example, you can participate in the national IGF. And this is where, so NetThing would be where the local internet community in Australia comes together to decide and define what are some of the key sort of issues that Australia faces when it comes to internet public policy. So some of the things that we have looked at traditionally would be things like cybersecurity. There's a cybersecurity bill, for example, and I think that was a discussion in one of the sessions. There's also a lot on content moderation. Again, quite regulation focused at NetThing. That's something that people are very concerned about. And so they bring that up in NetThing sessions. We've also had some very interesting sessions to do with gender issues. Gender and ICT also come up very strongly at NetThing. So these are some of, is an example of, what could be discussed at the national IGF, and that is really determined by the local community. So the global IGF doesn't tell the regional nor the national IGFs what to do, what to talk about, what to discuss. It's really defined from an open and bottom-up process. And again, some of you are part of the NetThing steering committee that I see in the participant list today. But if you are interested in helping to shape NetThing and be part of the steering committee, you are also free to join us. That's I don't know time-wise how I'm doing, but that's what I have for now. But I'm sure we can get into more details as we get the questions along.
Thank you, Joyce, for that. You were both extremely good with time, so we've got even more time for questions. And so far, the questions are still fermenting in people's minds. We haven't got anything through in the Q&A module yet. So, dear audience, please think about questions, or we might even stretch a little bit to comments if you've got those. But questions are always preferred. I do have a few in my back pocket. So, Joyce, do you want to carry on for a bit?
Since there's a bit of time, I might also share a bit about the intersessional work at the IGF. That's an area that is typically not gaining a lot of interest, I would say, particularly from community in the Asia Pacific region, partly because of time zone problems. It's just very hard to get involved in late night calls. But I think it's good to know that this intersessional work is happening. So the IGF doesn't just have the annual conference. We also have kind of like working groups talking about different areas. So we have dynamic coalitions, we have best practice forums. There's one best practice forum on cybersecurity this year. Policy networks. So policy networks are sort of new. They've only been around for the past 1 or 2 years. And the idea is really just gathering people together to discuss a certain topic, but with a more public policy view to it. So slightly different from a BPF, but honestly, if you ask me in terms of the actual work agenda, policy networks and BPFs are actually quite similar in that sense. It's just whether or not you get funding for some secretariat support. So the policy networks, we have, I think, 3 this year. So there's one on internet fragmentation. That's their 2nd year. There's one on meaningful access that's been going on for a while now, also 2 or 3 years, I think. And we have a new policy network on artificial intelligence. So this one is new. They're only just starting. I think they have the secretariat support only just come in. So they would be starting up their work probably quite soon. So if you're interested, you could go to the IGF website and find out a little bit more about these different working groups. There is also, I think, the IGF Secretariat is trying to do a bit more on capacity development. And so I think Jordan mentioned there's going to be a parliamentary track, perhaps at the APrIGF. This is one example of capacity development where we try to bring in representatives from stakeholder groups that we typically do not see at the IGF, but do have influence and impact on internet public policy. There's also a lot of youth initiatives. So I neglected to mention, for example, that youth IGFs are a very big thing. They tend to be tacked on to the national IGFs. I don't think that there is a youth IGF on that thing, but something that we could consider, I think, in the future. But youth IGFs are basically a next gen program to bring more newcomers into IGF and sort of get them started in what an IGF is about, what we discuss, what are some of the hot topics, and helping them to get around some background knowledge and thinking around these issues. Sorry to take up so much time, but I thought it's just good to run through the intersessional work as well while we wait for questions to come in, as I see they have. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Joyce. And yes, we do have a few questions. Thank you, audience, for starting to shake those around. I'll just read the questions out and then invite each of you, if you'd like to make a response. I'll do Andrew and then Joyce because it's alphabetical by first name. And if I've got any editorializing to add, I'll do that too. But the first one is from Steph and asks, how difficult is it to get involved in the different committees? She might be talking about the multi-stakeholder steering group or the MAG or the practical committees that are doing more of the detailed organizing. So Andrew, do you have a view about that?
So I'm just going to focus on the APrIGF. So with the Asia Pacific IGF, we have various committees. So we are very open to everyone in the Asia Pacific region to join. There is no membership fee, it's all free. But if you're interested in a particular topic or even helping in designing the program, designing the fellowship, designing the different committees, how we work, you are welcome to join us. We do go through the secretariat of the APrIGF, and I'm going to put in some information on the chat group so that everyone is aware who to contact. You could also directly contact me if you wish to know more about how do we engage with various committees in the region. For example, I'll just give you an example. There's quite a lot of good, interesting events happening in national IGFs like Bangladesh, Nepal. We also have some interest from Cambodia, Laos this week. So, you know, there's those communities as well that you could also be engaged in. While they're national, they also invite people to join and learn about the things that are happening in those countries. But for APrIGF, we are open. We will welcome everyone to join the different committees.
Thank you, Andrew. And because I think in the format of the webinar, the chat isn't enabled,
okay.
we might get you to send through, both of you, any sort of links or references you'd like to share with the audience. And then in the sort of thank you for attending email that Michael sends out from AUDA, we can include those links and so on. So
Sure.
we will be able to get everyone that info. It might be a little bit tricky to do it during the call. Joyce, how about the global structure or net thing? What can you tell us about involvement in those?
So the UN IGF at the global level is slightly more involved, only because they have more strict criteria around the diversity. There has to be representation, for example, across all the different regions. And as much as possible, I think they try and find people who come from geographic locations who have not been represented before. So to give, for example, developing economies more of a chance to be on the MAG. The MAG is, to be a member of the MAG, it is an appointment from the UN Secretary General. So it passes through the DESA office, so UN DESA. DESA stands for probably Development, Economic and Social something. I'm sure you can look it up what UN DESA is. But they basically oversee the IGF Secretariat and then are part of the nomination process. So it's quite involved. You have to put in an application. You have to also be a representative of a particular stakeholder group. So for myself, I am representing the technical community. I think it also perhaps is good to mention that At the IGF MAG, typically we do not speak on behalf of our organizations or institutions. We generally are speaking as individuals ourselves. We are representative of the technical community, but typically when we are in negotiations, we are just speaking as ourselves rather than as, say, I am as a staff member of APrIGF. At the APrIGF, it's quite similar as well. We also tend to speak more as individuals. When we do speak, or when we are speaking as a representative for our organizations, we try to make that clear, the distinction between the two when we're speaking about what. So to answer the question, yes, slightly more difficult for the MAG. You would need to have, for example, people or organizations as references who will back your nomination, so to speak. And I know for the technical community, there is specifically a group called the ITCG that looks at nominations to the MAG from the technical community. So, yeah, we try and support one another in that sense. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that rundown. And if you're interested in the Australian National IGF NetThing, check out the website for NetThing, which is netthing.org.au, I believe. And you can find out some more details about participation methods there. We had a question from Matt about how might we encourage more participation in these forums from a variety of Australian stakeholders. Andrew's given some thoughts in writing in response to that question. One of the things that auDA is doing on that, Matt, is profiling and sharing these events through webinars like this. We'll be using our member emails, which go out to a few thousand people on a weekly basis. And as various side events and so on are launched, we'll be doing a bit of media outreach and hoping to get a bit of general media coverage within Australia about the event. That's something that all of you can do, given the institutions and audiences that you're connected with. If you've got any links into diverse Australian communities that might be interested in policy related to the internet or these events, please do encourage them to find out more about the APrIGF, about NetThing, about the global IGF, and so on. Joyce, did you want to add any thoughts about that question?
Sure. I think one of the best ways to encourage participation from particularly new, community members is to get them involved in sessions. That has been one great way of inviting new people and really getting them to show up, speak about a subject that they are an expert in, and then be able to learn and hear from the views of others on other different topics. So I think the best way, especially for this year, because APrIGF is going to be in Australia, in Brisbane, and that is such a great opportunity to then just turn up, speak to people. The community are very kind and very helpful, very friendly. And we really believe in the no stupid questions, kind of culture. You really can just ask anything and learn about as much as you can about different topics. So APrIGF this year would be one great opportunity to participate and just learn about it. It's a free event. You really just register and turn up. The other great opportunity would be IGF. It's coming back to the Asia Pacific region. I think the last time was 10 years ago, 2013 in Bali, Indonesia. And so for the IGF to be in Kyoto this year is, again, another great opportunity to go there, meet the global community. It's actually very exciting for us to be, in a time where we could actually have an IGF that's sort of in our region, sort of almost in our home ground. And so I'd really, really encourage those of you, if you feel that you are very new to this area and you don't know, you can write into any of us and we can talk about, how you could participate. What are some of the things that typically get discussed at the IGF or at the APrIGF, or if you have a focus area or a subject matter area that you're an expert in, you could be a potential speaker at one of the sessions. You could also raise up your hand and say, hey, consider me as a speaker, perhaps. So these are some of the ways that you could get involved.
Thanks, Joyce. There's a related, just editorialize myself into the convo for a moment. There's a related question about what does a day at one of these events feel like? And to give a bit of the color, it's a bit of a 9-to-5er in one sense, and the program's organized in 60-minute blocks. So each session lasts for an hour. There tends to be a bit of a break. There'll be some coffee and snacks around it, morning and afternoon tea, a lunch late on at lunchtime. To answer another question, neither the APrIGF nor NetThing nor the global IGF have any attendance fee. These are free to enter and participate events. And to build slightly on something Joyce said, the session might be a roundtable, or it might be a workshop, it might be a town hall, it might be a fireside chat where an interesting guest is interviewed by someone. Almost always there's a chance not just to ask a question, but also to share your perspective and expertise. So that's something that you can come in with an expectation of as well. And at the end of each day, there'll be some sort of a drink or social function to keep the networking and the conversation going on. Does anyone want to add a bit more flavor to what it's like to be there?
The social function is fun. Networking is the best part about the event because you get to meet so many amazing people. And also it's not just about just listening to some of the workshops or roundtable, but it's also getting acquainted with them in terms of, just looking at what you could do for your own country, right? There's good practices, best practices, say, for example, in Korea, Japan, in Bangladesh, in Fiji, etc. You could learn so much from them, take away what you can and sort of apply the same model approach in your country. That's the best part. And I love that, especially when it comes to global IGF, APrIGF, and also the national IGFs.
There's another angle to this as well, because it's a hybrid event. If you're coming to Brisbane, you'll be able to socialize. But if you're in your national community, if you're listening to this or participating from outside Australia, you can do a local hub arrangement. And there's information about that process on the APrIGF website. So that might mean that you sort of organize a venue where people from your city or region come together and participate together in the event, but also have the chance to do your own socializing or co-creation alongside it. Let's get through a few more questions. There's one that is a comment from Mohammed, journalist in Bangladesh, observing that in the APrIGF and even in the global IGF, journalists are less represented as a group. We should encourage journalists to be active in the internet governance activities. That certainly gets a thumbs up from me. If you can participate, if you can encourage other journalists, to participate, please do so. Abdullah asked a question, could any of you kindly share your personal experiences of successfully balancing volunteer work with internet governance with your day job? Despite their passion for IG, as the person says, I often find it challenging to find time between work and family commitments. Andrew, Joyce, what do you think? Balance?
Yes, that is a very good question. From a personal experience, it is challenging to juggle lots of things. I have my day-to-day job, but that does not mean that I'm not passionate about helping the communities. One of the things that I keep reminding people is that you need to be a genuine volunteer, right? You need to be genuinely interested in supporting the IGF process, the regional and national IGF. Many of us have children. I don't, but I'm just speaking for others. Many of us have, they have children. They have, their other duties because they're also supporting organizations in their countries. They're also doing charity work. But what I really appreciate about some of these volunteers that we have in the Asia Pacific IGF is despite all the challenges that they have, they continue to come together and work together to build a really good multi-stakeholder community for APrIGF. And we've had, it's some of the challenging things are like, for example, if someone is volunteering on the program committee or the fellowship committee, they may not be able to attend all the meetings, but they are genuinely interested and they do provide a lot of comments and feedbacks if there is a document produced. We are particular about, people who are, we want doers, basically. And volunteer, I know we don't pay people, but I think it's driven by passion. And I think it makes a huge difference if you could just, spend at least an hour, 2 hours a week to support the communities. It's not just about the regional communities, but also about the national, right? There are a couple of people that come to me directly, and I am always on WhatsApp with them, basically explaining, okay, now this is how it works in APrIGF. This is how it works when we discuss access or digital connectivity. This is how it works. So I think that mentoring and coaching session also happens throughout the process. It's not just a one-off event process. We do that continuously every year, and Joyce also knows that. People come to us, they ask us questions, they want to learn more about APrIGF. But I keep reminding people is that mental health is very important. So look after yourself while you are doing the volunteer work with APrIGF or any other communities. So yes, it is challenging, but we do believe in passion, and passion really drives people to do things in their region. Thanks.
Thanks, Anju. Joyce, have you got anything to add to that?
I think I would caveat that I'm one of few very, very lucky individuals where part of my day job is participating in internet governance matters, and not just multi-stakeholder fora, but multilateral ones as well. That is literally, part of my job description. But I'm lucky in that respect, and that is not the case for many people who are volunteering their time, say, for example, being part of the APrIGF, participating in meetings for the MSG, having to take personal time off just to attend the event or the conference, or having to pay your own way forward. One good way is to make use of fellowships that do come about at the APrIGF and at the IGF to help support yourself to be part of that work. There are also many ways to participate or to volunteer your time. It need not just be at the MSG or at the MAC level. It could be, for example, contributing to the APrIGF synthesis document. So there is a synthesis document. It's a combination of everything that gets, well, not everything, but condensed, views that get discussed at the APrIGF. And that synthesis document serves as kind of like the key messages from the APrIGF, from the event that year. And then the synthesis document then gets shared with the IGF. The IGF also has key messages that come out after each conference. And you could also take those key messages and sort of bring them back to your local community. So that doesn't require actual time in the sense of having to be in a meeting or organizing meeting, but you could be using that time to share the messages to your local community, or having those discussions at a more local level. To give you some perspective, because I'm on MSG and on the MAG, what that means is, so for example, this 2 months from now to June, July is basically workshop evaluation season. And I'll have about almost 200 workshop proposals to get through in this 1 month odd time frame, just to evaluate everything and then to discuss what actually would get into the programs. So it's a lot of time to spend. It's extremely tedious. And again, this is for those people who might be thinking, well, I might want to put myself in the bag. This is first-hand experience I'm sharing with you. MAC meetings, they tend to be outside of Asia Pacific time zone, unfortunately, because the Secretariat is based in Geneva. And so far our chairs have been also, from the American region or from Europe. And so MAC calls are typically around 2 or 3 a.m. in my time. Again, I am doing this as part of my work, as my job. I'm being paid to do this in that sense, but I am giving my personal time and lack of sleep to doing all these things. So it is challenging to find that balance between doing all this work and then also family commitments. But I think it's really up to you how far you want to go. Nobody is saying that you necessarily need to be on the MAG and then devote all that time all the after work hours to doing these things. There are many other ways to get involved. So it's really your own comfort level, how much you'd like to contribute and participate. Thanks.
Thank you both for those really great answers. The only other thing I'd add is that one model is to choose an angle that you are knowledgeable about and interested in and to contribute your views. The other way is to choose something that is completely new to you that you want to learn more about and to be able to just start to help getting engaged. So you can really choose how involved you get, how much time you commit. And once you start to show an interest, the system does tend to pick you up one way or another. You'll get volunteered for something, or someone will wrap you into some appropriate working group. So it can be quite a good experience once you stick your toe in the water, as it were. Look, we're coming up to time for this webinar. We've got a little bit longer. I wanted to just mention in a verbal way one of the other questions around assistance for getting Australian visas for those traveling from abroad. I think there might have been a bit of a written response, but just to say, as part of the application process, and we're thinking that applications will probably open, not applications, it's open, but registrations will probably be opening next week. You'll get a letter confirming that you've registered for the event. And if you get a fellowship from the APrIGF or another organization, you'll also get a letter that says you've been selected as a fellow to participate as well. And AUDA is liaising with the Department of Home Affairs here in Australia to keep them in contact with the conference and registration. So it isn't a direct assistance system where we'll be helping walk you through the process, but there is that sort of liaison and awareness going on the part of the government. So look, I'm going to move us to wrap. Sorry that we didn't get quite through all the questions. There was one about the parliamentary track, which the UN is organizing, and there's one about the connection between IGF and ICANN. We won't be able to tackle those today. But let me thank you both, Andrew and Joyce, for your contributions today. They've been super great, and I hope they've given all of you who are sort of here to learn a bit more about this some interest and excitement in what's going on. Michael has put a slide up with the dates for the various events that are happening in Brisbane. Registrations for this package will open shortly. And one way to find out about that is to be on the announcement list for the various events, which you can subscribe to through their website. If you've got any questions, you can also drop us a line through email host, HOST, @aprigf.au. You can, we will send out a sort of thank you note after this webinar today or tomorrow, just to include a few other links to the websites and the dates that are on this slide. It is my solemn duty to also encourage you to sign up as a .au member if you're in Australia, if you haven't done already. That's another way to keep in touch with this and a range of other events. You can, it's a free membership. You don't have to pay anything, offers a range of benefits to keep you informed on what's happening in the Australian internet ecosystem. And with that, thank you all for participating, and thank you, Joyce and Andrew, for coming and sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. Really appreciate that. The recording will be available later for those of you interested in the review. So thank you once again for participating, and have a brilliant Wednesday. That's us signing out. See you later.
Thank you, everyone. Get in touch with us. Looking forward to helping you. Bye.
Bye-bye.